Today, I believe, is Thursday, March 6th. It's approximately 5:35 p.m. Today is the reconvening of the 2025-2026 Board of Finance budget hearing. I note all members are present. If there's any objection, we will start the meeting. Okay, for the members of the public, tonight is our technical discussion on both the mayor's budget and the Board of Education budget. I do see members of the Board of Education are here this evening, as well as the mayor. Welcome. So in order to facilitate everyone's schedule, I mean, we primarily handle the technical side of the city budget on more of a line item basis and make any technical changes that we discuss during our department head meetings or anything that the Board of Finance members would like to address tonight. On the Board of Education budget, we're certainly not going to go line by line, but if anybody, we'll start with the Board of Education budget, and then if there are members here, if anybody has any further questions or comments they'd like to make, at this time there will not be a vote on either budget tonight. So it's really just technical discussion, and as I said, since there are members of the Board of Education here tonight, if there are any comments on that, or if people are still considering it, that's fine too. But I just thought rather than have them wait 2 hours from the city side, we could address any comments now. And I'd also like to thank the Board of Ed for supplying additional information in response to our meeting last week. So thank you for that follow-up. Okay, any questions or comments on the Board of Ed? We'll address those now, or if there's any specific item in the Board of Ed budget that we didn't cover a week ago, we'll discuss it further tonight.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So thank you, Ms. Brennan, for sending the follow-ups earlier today. One of the questions, I think, around the Milford Academy, it said in your policy it was 150, so the school has capacity for 150 students.
So that's,
Yes, that's
Students and staff, that's, okay,
that's the
so,
human body.
that's what I was trying to drive at.
Marshall,
Okay, so 150 people are allowed in the building?
Yes, sir.
Gotcha, okay. And then, according to my notes from when we were talking about a week ago, generally speaking, you have about 115 students. Like, you know, like even though the budget book says, like drew over, what does it say? 49, 19 or something?
15, 17.
Over
next
I
week.
drew over.
Yeah.
But even though that's kind of what you plan for, usually it fluxes up.
Yeah. Enrollment fluctuates throughout the year, and a student may receive services at the academy, but may not be there like full-time all year long. So when we take a look at the number of students that were provided services throughout the year, I don't have the numbers in front of me, Mr. Moulton, but I think 115 was one of the numbers.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear. Okay, so 150 people are allowed in the building, 115 are students. So your
And
capacity.
there are 3 types of programming there, I think we went over this, the academy, alternative education, the PM program, which is more of like a credit recovery, some kids who are on expulsion receive services there, and then some of our specialized programming. Receive services there works out of that space as well. So there's different type of programming that goes through the academy.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. And I just have a question, you just handed this out, thank you, because I think Dr. Brennan, you just sent this recently. Where in the salaries part of the book would we find these administrator salaries? Like what?
Yeah, so there'd be different areas.
It'd be the 1,000 series.
The 1,000 series.
So they're sprinkled throughout the 1,000 series.
So to page 1. You see special ed, all schools, central admin.
Okay.
And there are some that are funded through grants, so I see you doing the counting.
Okay,
There are
so,
some salaries that are partially funded through grants.
gotcha, okay, so all schools, 8, that's the instructional supervisor. On page 1,
We'll check.
because there are 9 of them.
Yeah, so, yeah, there's 2 that are, partially funded, so, of the 9 on this list, one of them is, split funded between, the general fund and a grant, and then another one is, there's 2/10 of their salary on the general fund and 8/10 on a grant. But we gave you the full look of all
Gotcha.
people stationed here and their salaries.
Because this budget book is just reporting like what's on that.
What you're actually, okay. All right, so that's where those instructional supervisors are, all schools, 8, okay. There's 9 here, but, all right, understood. And forgive me, I'm not in the school, what is an instructional supervisor? What's their day, what do they do?
So Terry, can you?
Yeah. So the instructional supervisors are in schools every day of the week, either facilitating professional learning with staff. They work with our instructional coaching team to continue to develop our program there. Curriculum development, assessment development. They're in classrooms working with teachers. They also handle some of our supervisory load in terms of educator evaluation. And there's also some work with principals. They're in working and supporting principals with overall instructional improvement efforts within the buildings. And then there's also some district level things that they interact with me for, whether it's planning district-wide professional learning, it's supporting student assessment when we do our state summative assessments. So there is really a wide reach, and each supervisor, depending on level, handles anywhere from 6 to 8 buildings.
And they oversee how many areas of curriculum in total?
In total, if we talk about all the supervisors, it's well over 300 different courses from pre-K to 12 in terms of regular core content as well as content electives as well.
So Mr. Moulton, a standardized feature of an organizational structure in education has curriculum and instruction leadership. So those supervisors provide leadership in the areas of teaching and learning. That's a standard feature of a school district, particularly a school district our size.
Gotcha. So we had 8 last year, 8 this year, 8 proposed, 2023, 7.2. Is it one of these positions that's just, slowly increasing year over year, or has it been pretty consistent, like 7, 8 for, if we go back 5 to 10 years?
I did a presentation for the Board of Aldermen last year, and we demonstrated how that number has been consistent with the exception of the addition of 1 administrator that we added to align with the work prioritized by the budget in the area of belonging and engagement and equity. So that number has been pretty steady. And prior to that, prior to me being here, curriculum instruction leadership was, I think there's always been curriculum instruction leadership, but it was in a different format. And I think my predecessor demonstrated by changing it to an administrator function, it even saved money and efficiencies. I'm looking over to Ms. Glenn and hoping I got that story right.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So the structure has been in place before I got here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
No, just a follow-up on that, okay?
Yes,
Or do you have, I don't know.
No, please do.
Thank you for getting me that information, I appreciate it. Going back to the organizational chart that we talked about last week, is Wendy Capazna, Director of Talent Management and Development, is she included in on this? She's not in this list.
She's not an administrator. The definition of administrator in our world is a certified leader.
Okay, so I think what I was looking for last week was the staff down at the central office. I called it downtown and then I was corrected. We don't refer to it as downtown.
We walked away really, I guess, confused, because what we answered wasn't what you asked, and what we
Right.
gave you, I guess, is not what you want either, so
Right.
we're happy to provide you information, I guess we just want clarity leaving this meeting what you want.
Yeah, I
We
went
want
back,
every single person in, and we don't really use the word downtown, so
Right,
can
I
you be
know.
more specific about what downtown means?
the central office, the central district. You know, whoever,
Everybody.
like Wendy Capazna, and what do we have, the Director of Facilities, the Director, who's ever on this flow chart, I guess, isn't in the, at the school, they're based out of here, correct?
Right, but we also have like a maintenance guy that works here, and we also have
Business office,
the business, like Mr. Cavallaro, and payroll supervisor, so
secretary.
is that everybody?
Yeah. If that's, if
So-
it's not too burdensome, I would, that would be great, just so we could see who's,
So all those individuals are represented in the tab under 1,000, so you could see, I mean, we're happy to just run a list.
I think, you know, if we could just match up this list with, you know, your chart, your organizational chart, if we could match this with something like what you just provided, would be great. So if we had names associated with the positions,
Well,
like, if, I know that you're the superintendent, so I can fill you in right up here.
right, but you
But as
said
we
you
go
wanted
through
it
the-
like what the police department does, and the police doesn't provide names. The,
Well, no, what-
the Parks and Rec doesn't provide names, the HR department doesn't provide names. So I would respectfully say, we're happy to provide you with information, but, Mr. Lima, could we get clarification as to why we need the name of a person with the position, with the salary? And that, I don't believe, is something that's asked of all city departments.
okay, what I was referencing last week was that each FTE was spelled out within the budget. And you said, well, we have 1,300 employees, do you want all that? And I said, no, and I focused in on downtown, I was corrected, it's not downtown. We refer to it as central district or central office or
So
something
we
to
thought
that
it was
effect.
administrators, so we
And
gave
then-
salaries
And
administrators.
then Mr. Lima chimed in and he said, what are you looking for? And I said, I'm looking for a list of, you know, I didn't want job descriptions, we eliminated job descriptions from that request. So, and then you referenced me to this.
Yep.
So if we could just match this with something like this.
Well, I
So
think
that
that's
is-
appropriate, but I think that it's really the salary goes with the position, not the individual, so I don't think we really.
But I also wanna see if all these positions are filled,
Well, that's,
you know? And that's why I
So
wanna
can-
see if there's a name associated with the positions.
So again, Mr. Lima, is this what is it being expected of all city departments?
no, I think the salary goes with the position. I do think if it's position's vacant and you have that information, that would be.
We could provide you with a list of vacancies, and I think we did, actually.
Well, we indicated a number, you know, we have 11 vacancies.
Right, so we're happy to give you the positions that are vacant currently in the district.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate. Again, I don't think Jeff, I don't think the names, we don't really get names associated with any position. I don't recall ever doing that. So, Board of Ed, City, I just don't think, I don't think it's relevant for our discussion.
Okay.
You know, if I could, just, the specificity of the request is what's unusual, because as you know, Mr. Lima, the Board of Finance allocates a lump sum amount to the Board of Education, whose responsibility it is to have the line item purview over the dollars. And so we as a board, you know, annually look at certain classes of employees, the non-bargaining unit employees, and discuss salaries and things of that nature. That's our purview. So the specificity here is what is a little unusual, just as a comment.
No, that's correct, we only, as you know, it's a lump sum appropriation, but there are various components to it, and salary is one of them.
Yep,
So I think
understood.
getting a perspective of relative salaries or allocations between transportation or supplies or something, I think that, you know, this board could evaluate.
That's fine. I'll go based on your recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Okay, do we,
So I don't think I know what you want.
well, I think, as I understand it, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, or if this is something you feel is not readily available or appropriate, I think just the position and the salary, and if that position is vacant.
Okay.
What's on the org chart?
What's
is
on
what you
that?
just
Oh,
asked.
what's on the work?
Take the org chart and attach a salary to each position is what you're asking for. Just
And
so
if
that
it's
we're clear.
vacant, and if it's vacant or not.
And just to clarify, the org chart that is in front of you, because I did not provide you with that org chart.
This is from your,
This is January
January 22nd meeting, sir?
22nd.
this was from one of your workshops.
Yeah, okay. We will take that org chart and make sure that all those positions by title have a salary and let you know if they are filled or not.
Milford Public Schools District and Building Leadership 2025-26. And there's several pages of it.
Is that the one with principals on it?
Yeah, school principals, yep.
I mean, you seem to have a pretty good handle on it in the appendix of 813.
Correct, yep.
You know, maybe just make sure that it's here mirrors the org chart.
Well, 813 is what we sent in our email today, and we told that was not, we were told that's not what you were looking for.
And I think it's the marrying of the org chart positions to
Yep,
here.
okay.
That's it.
Happy to do. If I could just snap a picture of what you have, Mr. Matchett, because I just don't wanna, we have an org chart that we published before that. Or you can just give me a copy,
Sure.
but, I get everybody's names.
Thank you.
Are all the positions on this list
I'll turn the page.
full? Are there any, like, if you're looking at this list that you provided, are they all full, or are there any vacancies?
No, there are some vacancies on there.
We have interims though.
We have interims on the roll right now.
Alright, thank you.
How many? We have 2 that are in interim right now.
Instructional supervisors, 2 of them?
Correct.
One, is being filled April 28th, that person's starting the 28th. Well, actually, you don't have one that is vacant. Ms. Swanson is the interim at East Shore,
Sure.
so she has not left that position. So Ms. Swanson is an instructional supervisor, been with us about 30 years. She is currently the interim at East Shore Middle, there's a principal vacancy there. So she is doing the interim at East Shore Middle, so she technically has not vacated that position. And the interim, for the other position, we've announced that we've hired and she is leaving her district and coming to us on April 28th.
So forgive me, interim means that they're just
Filling in.
acting until the
Yeah.
permanent position, permanent hire.
How's the market for that position? Is it pretty easy to fill, or is it something that usually?
Well, for the position that, the individual starting April 25th, we got that vacancy, August, and that's a hard time to fill. Anyone that may wanna leave like a position already, it would be hard of anyone of quality to leave that late. So that's why we decided to go with the interim and then hire around this time of year, and we had a very strong candidate pool, actually. Milford's a desirable place to work. So we don't usually have difficulty attracting and retaining. We experience shortage area struggles like everybody else. Special ed is always a struggle to hire. Sometimes where languages struggle to hire, science positions struggle to hire, so we're not immune to that challenge across the state, so.
So, I have two questions, really, with clarification. You mentioned 11 vacancies, is that administration or is that throughout the system?
throughout the system.
Okay,
That's teachers and everything? You're only down 11 people?
okay.
That's
So
great.
Yeah, that's very well. And then going back to Ray's comment on A13, which I thought was very helpful. So administrators, the principals, they're part of targeting units as well? So, okay.
All administrators minus the 2 assistant supers and the superintendent
Oh,
are part of a bargaining unit.
all right, that's very helpful. So these are all.
But not every leader is an administrator. So
Right.
like Ms. Capazna, as Mr. Magic mentioned, she is not a certified leader. And in our world, there's a certified and non-certified. Oh, sorry, and Ms. Stewart is not in the union, pardon me, doesn't change anything.
All right, thank you, that's very helpful, because I could see that.
Okay, so for clarification, all the leaders, Mr. Matchett, all the quote-unquote administrators on that org chart is what you want, well, even Ms. Capazna, so anyone who holds a position of leadership,
Anybody that's on that work chart?
okay,
Thank you.
Any position, yes.
by position.
Anything further, Mr. Matchett?
Not on that, no, sir.
Well, you have the floor if you want to continue.
All right. The report that you gave us for the Versatrans report, that came in the email today. Thank you for that. There is, if we go to, I think the pages are numbered, but it says actual ridership, and it says average percent of ridership. How did they get to that number? Do you know?
It's a good report.
And this is an old report, but I know they spent about, I think in the survey there, they said they spent about 3 months or so on site. So I'm not sure what their data collection methods were, whether it was looking at, buses as they got off at schools, but they spent some time here actually collecting data for a few months. So I don't, at this point, 12 years earlier, I don't have the data collection methods, but it would be something along those lines of really up the
The reason I asked that is that in your response back to us, we're unable to provide a census of, because the card swipe system isn't working. So I would think back then the card swipe system, wasn't even thought about.
Right.
So I'm just trying to,
They didn't have card swipes.
I'm just trying to figure out, no, I know they didn't have card swipes, but I'm trying to figure out how they came to those numbers to determine the percentage of ridership.
I believe
with-
they actually, my recollection from when, because I was here at the time, he was not, they actually had their employees from the company that we hired doing audits as kids got on and off the bus.
And we don't do that currently?
Manually, no.
No.
And as I mentioned in my response, if a student shows up at a bus stop and they don't have their badge swipe on them, we're gonna bring them on the bus. So
Yeah.
that's why I don't think it's an accurate statement of what our actual ridership is. It is something that we had mentioned that is a goal for the future.
Right.
The current technology that we have doesn't allow for manual input. So if a student doesn't have a badge swipe on them, then there's no way for the bus driver to manually enter it. There's just the system, the tablets that they have, just don't have that capacity. So there's no way to even auto-correct from that. And as I'm sure you can imagine, anything manual at that stage would only further delay those bus routes. Any kind of other attendance tracking system they have, they know their families very well. These bus drivers know the families, they know the stops, they know who should be getting on the bus, so they are tracking it that way. If they see somebody that shouldn't be on that stop, that would be something they would address, but in terms of a manual automated system of keeping attendance, that would only further slow down any kind of transportation route that we have.
Thank you. And the last question, I think the number that I don't know who threw it out, it was 71 people that are offered rides that wouldn't normally be offered a ride because they're outside the distance. I don't know if that number was accurate last week.
The opt-in
Opt-in,
program?
yeah, the opt-in program. So how do we determine if there's availability on that bus for those opt-in people? How do we get to those numbers?
It would be through communication with those bus drivers and then take a look at average ridership on that bus. And more or less, if you think about the 71 or so, I don't have the number in front of me.
Yeah,
How many ever students there were that opted in? Not all 71 of those students are on any one bus.
Right.
I'm happy to report that we are able to accommodate almost all those requests, if not all those requests on every single year. And what it would be is those 71 spread out across all of our different bus runs, all of our different levels, really is a minute number, a small number on each one of those bus runs. So it would be more of conversation, do you have room for one or two more kids on the bus stop, based upon, and this doesn't occur until October, so they have that whole month of, is there space on that bus, and by space on that bus, it's a very small number, one or two students, so can you accommodate one or two more students? Yes. They're not digging into the details of exactly how many students you're getting every day, it's just, can you look and see that you have space for one or two more students? Yes, we do, we can accommodate that.
all right, thank you.
Thank you, ready?
I'm good.
Diane, Gloria?
No questions, just also make a quick comment. I looked at this book as a list of essentials. I believe somebody on that side of the table might have said the words no thrills, no frills. Salaries, transportation costs, health benefits, unfunded reading mandates. These are just some of the things I saw that, have to get done to have a successful school year. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
I have one more question, and I don't wanna get into it, but do we stand to lose any money, based upon, the current administration and the present federal funding, if we're not in compliance with certain areas?
It's really too soon to tell what's gonna happen with grant funds.
Specifically, the DEI, issue that he brought up on a national level. I think it was the end of February that we were supposed to be in compliance, with DEI programs or whatnot. What's the state of Connecticut's position on that, or where's that
I
going?
can't speak for the state of Connecticut anymore.
What's our position in Connecticut? Do we still, well, let me ask,
I'm not,
do we still have a
certainly not, I'm
DEI?
not sure if that's part of this conversation. I'd rather have that conversation with the Board of Ed first, but
Right.
please know that we are committed to serving every single child, Mr. Magic. I'm not here to discuss our president or his,
Yeah, I'm not either, but I'm concerned about the federal funding
executive
that we may
orders,
or may not
right.
lose.
I think there is threat of losing a lot of our funding, not just because of DEI. We are committed to serving all kids, all children of all walks. And we are committed to making sure every child feels like they belong here. That's the work of equity in Milford. We, our definition of equity is not what is being, is not part of the national rhetoric definition. We're about making sure every kid feels emotionally safe and every child is recognized and heard and seen. And that's what equity means to us. And I'm not actually sure what the president is talking about when he's saying no DEI. He hasn't released a definition, actually. So, and I really don't believe that that is really part of our 25-26 budget that's in front of you.
Do we have anybody in that position? Is Marissa still in that position?
She is.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's it.
That's it. One last time, everybody's good? All right, well, thank you again. You're welcome to stay for the city side report, but I'm sure you.
Sorry, Mayor. We support you.
I'll get you out before 2 a.m. So, good.
No, I think you should keep him here till 2 a.m. You should be here, He was there. Till the very end.
Well, Susan, thank you for showing up, thank you for your further input. Thank you.
Stay, help me answer some questions.
Let's talk about both. Let's start.
These guys are good.
Congestion pricing on Friday night downtown, 6 o'clock, we can do it, right?
Oh,
Right, Steve? A little congestion pricing right here in front of the church? I can see it. Took me 20 minutes to get from my office to my house, it's right there, I did it last week. Well, there was an accident, unfortunately, but, okay, everybody is settled and ready, we'll move on to the mayor's proposed budget. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for showing up tonight. Hope you got all the answers ready.
I do.
I don't think there's gonna be too many questions tonight. Okay, I've got to, refresh my recollection of where we start. I think we're on page, 13? No, page 14. Peter, would that be okay with you? Start at the beginning, so to speak, page 14?
Page 14, yes.
Okay. And Jeff, just so you have an understanding, I know this is the first time, and our system is not really perfect. But next week, when we get to vote, Scott typically will make a motion that will involve multiple departments. So we'll go through the departments en masse, so to speak, until there's a technical change or other change that needs to be made. And then we'll vote on those departments, and we'll handle the department that may need a change, and we'll do the same thing all over again. So for tonight's purposes, if we get to a point, and this is true for everybody, if we get to a point within a particular department and somebody wants to make a change, even though we're not gonna vote on it tonight, I would suggest you bring it up tonight so that Peter can be prepared next week. If there's a consensus on the board, even though it may not be entirely finalized, bring it up tonight. Peter will have an opportunity to work his numbers that he likes to do. And we can, that way when we vote next week, we can do so more efficiently. So if there's anything tonight, concerns, changes on a particular line item, it's best to bring it up tonight rather than next week, so.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to clarify, the vote is actually not next week,
Well,
it's almost 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah, almost 2 weeks.
Sorry.
Next week, we're watching basketball. Watching the conference champion, good conference.
Yeah, we want to make sure we have everyone present.
Yes, it's 18th? Yeah,
The 19th.
The 19th.
Wednesday the
Wednesday the 19th.
Oh, I have to look at a calendar.
Wednesday's a good night to do it. So thank you for the clarification.
And that's
2 weeks.
That's down at City Hall, correct? Which meeting's at City Hall?
No, I think
2
it's
weeks.
back here.
One in 2 weeks.
Oh, City Hall, Board of Aldermen.
City Hall.
Oh,
City
really?
Hall chamber, yes.
All right. Final vote.
That's the biggest thing, more chairs, yeah.
More chairs.
We wanted to make sure we had enough chairs,
Yeah.
in case more people
Is
show
that the
up.
one that's catered? I forget.
Yeah, that's the case. It's on page 28.
Chairman, that's the one we have to do the pledge.
Lie down.
He loves the pledge, he doesn't forget.
I forgot last year.
Did you?
I don't end up adhering now, when I, you know, it's, I don't know. My bad.
Mr. Mayor, did you put a memo out regarding the color of the ties for city officials today?
We did. We're on the same team. We both got the memo back.
That Tuesday was a couple days ago, I think, you know, that's when you were in purple.
He got some big
Well, that's really not purple, that's what.
Who cuts the checks, signs the checks.
Yeah.
Okay, so, we will start, as I said, I'm gonna I'm gonna keep going until someone stops me. So if you have any comments, stop. Okay, Board of Aldermen, page 14, elections, page 14, Register of Voters, 15, MGAT, 16, Mayor's Office, 17. Management. General expenses, page 19. Community development, page 20. City clerk, page 22. Law department, page 24 and 25, including ethics.
I do have one question.
Yes, sir.
What's the city attorney is at 100,000 and the assistant city attorney is at 120? I never have understood that.
Mr. Chairman, the short answer is basically the city attorney for a number of years is a quote unquote take a part-time position, so
Okay.
it's paid at a part-time level.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Thank you, Peter. You're welcome.
Thank you.
But he does slightly above.
But he does more than, as we've
A
said
lot
in the
of
past, he does a lot more than part-time.
A lot of volunteer hours.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay. Probate court, Board of Finance, permanent and land use. Now this is just because my memory's fading. Did we indicate, are we currently, is the job posted for the director's position?
It is.
And we're on the interview, or is it just being posted?
It's posted right now.
Okay.
We have, I don't know how many applicants we have at this point, but we will interview.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just make note to the board that there might be a technical correction on permitting and land use based on comments that were made by Chief of Staff Justin Rosen. We received an email from Susan LaFond, who's the administrative assistant, so she wanted me to take a second look at the advertising line item and the overtime. So I'll take a look to see if her concerns require a technical correction or not.
What were those two categories, Peter?
The two line items were advertising and overtime. She basically thought that they were underfunded, so I'm gonna look back at the notes and the exchanges that we had during the mayor's budget process until now, and I will make a determination to see if we need to increase them or not.
Thank you, Peter. And just on the overtime line, I know there's been some vacancies there. Is that part of the driver of the overtime at this point, because of the vacancies, or is that just a function of going to the?
I think it's a combination of both. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Page 29, Board of Assessment Appeals, Zoning Board of Appeals, Pension Board. Well, we used to go through all of these boards, but as you can see, it's primarily secretarial fees, so we no longer do them individually. And I'm not gonna do them individually now unless somebody has a comment, a question, so we'll go over to page 34, open space. Public library, page 35. And I would like to, thank the librarian, head librarian or library director, I should say, for, providing the supplemental information. Get that? Any, questions on public library, page 3-5? Oh boy, finance department, page 37.
Should double the budget.
Mr. Chairman, you may recall Marcus Eric, the assessor, recommended a technical increase to the reval operations account for the specialized appraisal that we need for Milford Power, to help with our pilot negotiations.
Yes, I do recall that, and that would be on page 37, the evaluation operations, that's currently 50,000.
Yes.
But I'm checking my notes and I didn't write down the amount of his request, unfortunately. What was the request?
He's requesting an increase of 40,000, so that would change it to 90,000.
Well, for myself, I'm in favor of that. I don't, because I think it's, you don't really have a choice. It's necessary to properly evaluate one of our biggest taxpayers, so. So if
Well,
there's,
just a question, 65,000 last year. You could even see, okay, you did do the same. What's the increase? Why?
well, as I understood it, because of the nature of the facility, the power plant, it takes a specialized appraisal to undertake that valuation. So that's expensive, so.
Okay, so eventually the appraisal itself is about $40,000.
Well, I'm sure
Because
that,
it's of a specialized.
Specialized, like a specialized nature, a non-recurring cost, but we need it upfront.
yeah.
How often is that,
Well, it's gonna be annual, well, every reval, but it was part of the pilot program previously that they negotiated an agreed upon figure and an agreed upon tax band, but that expired last year. So so it's going to be more of a traditional assessment appraisal than a pilot.
Last I heard, power plants increased the value.
Yeah. So, but obviously you want to get the correct valuation and you need a professional to do that, so.
So if you have a certified company doing it, you can withstand the legal challenges to, you're overcharging us.
Well, you still may have a fight, but you have the
After you're certified.
Yeah, you have the information or the appropriate documentation to support your position. As good as Bud Frankie is downtown, I don't think he's a power plant appraiser. So you need somebody with the talent. So I would suggest, unless there's any objection, that Peter, you prepare a technical correction for the 90, from 50 to 90.
You need a motion for that, Mr. Chairman?
No, we'll vote on it next week. So, but that's it'll be presented to us next week. But if anybody has a different thought, let's discuss it now, and then Peter can act appropriately. But we'll take the formal vote next week. Finance, payroll, page 38. MIS, page 39. You may recall there were some additional positions requested on page 40. I would support the mayor's recommendation not to fill those positions at this point, but I don't know if anybody else feels otherwise. Okay.
I think they came back and said that they were okay with the recommended
Yes.
anyway.
So, human resources, page 41 and 42. Okay. Police department, starting on page 43. The chief may not be happy with me, but it was my recollection that he was more or less, satisfied with the budget as presented by the mayor. I didn't recall any comments, that were contrary to that. And as he noted, there is an additional police officer position shown on page 50, which I understand to be the last position added pursuant to the 4-year agreement that was worked out a couple of years ago. Okay, if anybody has any on the police department, they can go back, but if not, I'll move forward to fire department, page 51.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
well, I have, been very impressed with the chief's command of his budget. He doesn't seem to waste anything. And my concern is that, at a minimum, the fire and clothing, he was like, we need 20% of whatever he needs. And I would like to see that at least up to his request from the 85 to 100. The other issue would be the training expenses, which I think is a little bit softer. But, it's just my thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. Whether you have any follow-up on those two? And Peter as well, or the mayor, my only recollection was, as you recall, on the revenue side, I think on page 7, paramedic fees and the fire department fees are significant, almost $2.5 million, due to the efforts of the department. But my recollection was that he was able to use some of those funds for these types of things that Mr. Arnold just indicated.
Up to $500,000.
For those things. So he could use those to supplement areas.
Yeah, he may use that account, or if he had savings in other accounts, we would also entertain a budget transfer too.
So how does that work? They get up to $500,000. Is that $500,000 not represented in their budget currently? Like is that an inflow anywhere here?
No, it's a separate fund, it's not an inflow, but when they build their budget, they keep it in mind and say, look, if we need an increase for a given account, and it's very high, and a portion can be attributable to EMS or be supplemented by EMS in that other fund, they will allocate accordingly. Or they will leave it alone and say, if, as we approach the end of the fiscal year, if there's a shortage, they'll consider charging that fund to make up the shortfall. If they can't do a mayor's transfer or board of finance transfer.
But that fund is primarily at their discretion.
So there's no restrictions?
It's at their discretion, I agree with the mayor, but I know one of their first goals is for capital outlay. So a lot of it's for big equipment, larger types of expenses, upfit to vehicles, emergency repairs that we don't have enough funding in the general fund, et cetera. But occasionally they'll look for like these non-recurring costs, like we talked about the appraisal, or if there's training that needs to be done in a given year and it's expensive, and there's not enough in this budget, they will look to that Fund 76.
Do they have to drain it in the every year, they can carry forward? Is there an amount that they have to?
No, they may carry it forward. If there's a residual fund balance, they may carry it forward. Yeah.
Is that carry forward capped at any number? Like if they just said they were not tapping it for 5 years?
No,
That just
the only cap is the 500,000 per year inflow.
Any talk around increasing the 500,000 cap at all?
There's been discussions, that would have to go through ordinance, the way it's set up is the ordinance right now, and that's the way it was originally planned.
Yeah.
Does that money show up anywhere in the budget?
That's a special fund. They have their own different Fund 76 accounts, like private duty and private duty car, for example, among other accounts. This account we're talking about is an EMS billing, which is fire.
But those funds are managed through your office, right?
Yes,
And then they'll.
correct.
They'll,
Everything flows through my
requisition
office,
of
yes.
funds. They just can't-
Yeah, it's out there, but it flows through review of my office and my department.
I'm sure that they'll have some input as well. Yes. Maybe.
I'm here to work with all the departments.
Thank you, Ray. Does that satisfy your question or your comments on that?
Yeah, I do question, why would he make the request if he had that in his back pocket?
He may have other,
Right, so his request is for a set of equipment in the budget. You know, but that would the budget's what, $15 million, $500,000 is a pretty good, in a sense, slush fund.
Yeah.
And
Well, we don't use that term, but, well, I don't wanna speak for, I don't wanna speak for the chief, but I'm sure he'll tell, there's probably dozens of demands for that money. So if he could get one of those demands satisfied in the regular budget, he'll indicate that that would be a preference, or if it's needed.
Quinte we bonded for was what, 1 point, that's just one point, and that's a 4-year, 5-year wait.
And we're doing a lot of upgrades to the fire department. We just did the roof, we fixed the heat, and now we're remodeling the office space as well. And that doesn't come out of his budget, that's,
part of that $500,000.
no, it's not part of that.
Okay, so where is the money coming from? If it's not out of his budget and it's not out of this $500,000 reserve.
Well, that comes from Public Works
Okay.
department budget for construction of buildings.
Is that central station that's being done now?
Yeah.
Didn't we bond for that a couple years ago?
Portion of it.
A portion of it, yeah. But
We're using other accounts to
to
fund the
do
expenses.
the. Okay.
So the money that he generates truly can be used for equipment. You know, we fund a lot of the upgrades to the building, to the structure. That doesn't come out of that fund. We're just trying to distinguish, you know, the need.
Does he have sole authority on how that money's spent? Or does that have to go through the fire commission, or who approves the spending from that account?
I don't believe it's the fire commission per se. It goes through approval workflow, so the chief would approve at the first level, then it moves on to the finance director, and then finally the purchasing agent would be the final approval for the rec purchase order. Yes.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, everyone. Any further questions or comments on fire department page 51? Also spoke to emergency management, but that was essentially flat, no, not exactly flat. Animal control, page 59. Page 62, lighting, hydrants and water. Okay, now we get to all the court and public works, page 63. Page 63 is Public Works Office. Steve, since you're here, I'm gonna ask you a question since I walk by it every morning. The silt fence on Prospect, the little bit there. Is that there for a reason? Because I don't think it's doing much at this point.
That was,
I know part of the sidewalk.
yeah, so that project is,
Yeah, on hold?
on hold, so the silt fence gotta be pulled out anyway, so
Yeah.
that would take
Might
care of
be,
that.
yeah. I walk by it every morning, and I look at it, I say, well, it's not even working, it doesn't even work.
Is that the web walk project, Steve?
Yeah, that was the first phase for the,
Okay.
yeah, for that project, so,
Well, somebody's clearing on the other side, so,
well, that,
it's,
yeah,
but, yeah, I don't wanna, yeah, but
I
that,
got involved with that, yes.
but the silt fence may be on the wrong side of the,
Yeah.
You go for a morning walk at this point.
Okay, highway parks, page 65. Okay, page 68, page 69, building maintenance. Either through you, the mayor, or Peter, the fuel charges, we used to spend a lot of time talking about electricity and fuel and everything else. They seem pretty stable, except maybe electricity with all the, and I think someone mentioned that the city actually pays the public benefit charge.
Yes, I do.
So do we, if those go over, are we pulling that from within the department? Because these are citywide electricity charges, obviously, but this is not,
Yeah,
you know,
those
public
charges
works
are
specific.
buildings that we're managing.
Yes,
I know in the past if we have an issue with electrical or fuel heating shortages, that we're working with the finance director in terms of balancing that out. The public benefits has been a significant increase this year. My understanding is going to start to phase down,
hopefully.
but some of the efficiencies that I think we had hoped for is being taken up because of that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's been a few years now, but we no longer have that energy management program or whatever it was, right? Is that still in the works? Are we paying somebody or have a contract for that?
One of the biggest impacts we had were a couple of energy projects that we did was the fuel cell down at the Beaverbrook plant, which is still we're benefiting from, for competitive electrical rates below what the market rates are, as well as the microgrid. And we're working on updating all the microgrid benefits, both to the city as well as to the Board of Ed.
Okay.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, but with all of that, we still have a cost driver of utilities,
Right,
$600,000 in this budget.
right. That's my concern is that these, no matter what you do or what Public Works does, they're gonna charge us whatever they want, basically. And we're gonna pay.
That's been indicated, we are one of the highest states in the country, number 2, other than Hawaii, that pays those types of rates, so.
Yeah, well, it's unfortunate. I guess now that we're, in 11, 20, can we get some updated figures for next week? I mean, this budget figures as of, well, almost 4 months ago, exactly 4 months ago today, from 11/6/24. I'm just curious as to what the projection is and what the actual is
For electricity.
for electricity.
Sure.
Because we're two-thirds of the way through the year at this point, instead of third of the way, that's on page 69.
To Steve Johnson's point, if we didn't have those other programs in place, we would
We'd
be
pay a
actually
lot.
paying more.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, those were, fuel cells are definitely, we've got the grid here and then the Beaver Brook plant, certainly. We're very smart, forward-looking projects, so. But I just wanna get a sense of, how bad it's gonna be. Building maintenance, page 70, 71.
So, Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Arnold, this account represents money that would be spent on a city building such as the fire headquarters to make improvements,
Okay,
and other city buildings as well.
the building maintenance fund
Right.
on page like 71.
Those are personnel, but, the building improvements on page 70, is that the line? I'm sorry.
Is that what we're talking about?
Well, I wasn't sure, I know Mr. Arnold's question about, it came up about the non-bonding work, where it comes from. Does that show up here, or a particular line item? No.
Well, it's some of that funding that we referred to earlier. We had bonded specifically for some fire department
Right.
improvements. The excesses of that are mostly also funded through other building, bonded funding that we have. And we just went through this last, it got approved this week. So we have a general, an account for grant, bonded funding that we use for a variety of different building repairs and roofs.
Now, if I recall correctly, the fire department itself had some money in the building. Building materials, well, 13,000, that's not gonna be much.
Yeah, that's more miscellaneous.
Well, building repairs, they have $54,000, is that not miscellaneous too, or is that?
Miscellaneous, yeah, and things that are, come up during the course of the fiscal year that they need to take care of.
Yeah, well, they've got, how many houses, 6 of them? Did we went down, firehouses? 6? Is one a pizza place yet?
Sure, yeah. No, couple years.
Yeah.
Four down,
We used to have like 8 of them.
Well, we're more than 8, but there used to be one every, there were probably 20 of them at one point, right? Going back,
Oh, yeah.
one more.
Was I?
Lauren would remember, right?
I'm old. I'm staying on the pizza place.
I know, good, better get some dinner tonight. Going to Lassie's, my plan.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, on page 71, building maintenance, I just want to give you a heads up. There is a possibility of a technical correction that may need to be made for the superintendent and foreman night custodian. And when we go ahead to the general garage, the foreman there, I'm trying to get more information from Director Saley. The union, I know, has also been trying to get information from these individuals in terms of a possible annual stipend that may or may not be permanent, or it could be temporary if it's related to the individual. So I'm trying to get more information, so I just wanted to give you a heads up about that. I'm not sure as of today whether or not we would need to make the technical correction, but if I learn more and I get more definitive information, there is a possibility that we may need to consider it for 7/125. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. We will keep an eye out for us. So far, there's been very few technical corrections, so that's good. Engineering, page 72, 73. General garage, page 74, 75. Mr. Johnson, I'm sorry. The gas propellants, refresh my recollection, is that include police or is that just city? Yes. It includes police.
Yeah, we charge back to departments, for certain Board of Ed vehicles, for police. Other city departments use that, but we charge that back to the departments. Yeah, that's from the fuel island of the public works.
So does that mean the 275 is just for your department? Like you
yes.
buy 400,000, you sell back, you
Yeah.
know?
Actually, is that correct, Peter? Do the other departments,
Well, I'm looking
in this
here,
they don't have a fuel?
I didn't think they, well, oil,
Other departments, they have a gas and other propellants,
Yeah,
some
well-
certain departments, but not oil though.
Yeah, no, but for the vehicles,
yeah,
For
fi-
the, they do,
Yeah.
certain departments have a gas and other propellants for their vehicles.
we're
yes.
charging, allocating back.
yeah, so the
Yeah.
fire department at page 51, I'm just looking at, it's 102,000.
Yeah, they have their own fuel separate,
Oh, they do?
yeah,
Okay,
they're separate from public works.
all right.
That's basically what you're charging them.
That's what we're, our net cost.
Right.
Excluding the city departments that use the public works fuel island to fuel up their city vehicles.
Does that include retired officers? Like, is that-
Unless a retirement gas card.
Unless he's got a
we gotta do some sharpen our
have a
pencils.
special file for that.
That was negotiated.
Cost you $1 million.
That was a tough negotiation with that contract.
Thank you. Good to help. General garage, we were discussing solid waste. Page 77. Which,
That's another cost driver. The dump fees have increased significantly.
yes, well, hopefully we'll get our new trucks sooner than later. Because, as you all know, I mean, that, page 77 used to be 3 times as long, right, with the number of drivers and laborers, so
Yes.
the trucks are well worth it.
You've also had a reduction in injuries. That was also one of the justifications.
Yeah, that was one of the big drivers of that going to be automated, yes.
Yeah, good point for that. Page 78. Public bond, or public debt service, excuse me. I do see reductions there, rather significant reductions. Is that because of interest rates or just lower debt or
No,
combination?
that's part of it, but the main reason is that we did, simultaneously when we did the annual bond issue in
Yes.
October, we also did a separate refunding or refinance of eligible bonds, which saved the city, money over this, it affects this fiscal year in particular and also future fiscal years.
Well, I know that's been done in the past, but that's, excellent news and excellent work. So thank you for taking advantage of that availability, so. It's a lot of money. Health Department, page 79. We'll move right over to Health Department.
You gotta stay healthy.
Recreation Department, page 82. And again, thanks to Mr. Garfield for providing us with follow-up information. Appreciated.
Mr. Chairman, that's another department that is affected by lighting and electricity significantly. There's been an increase.
Yes. Looking to the,
Mr. Mayor, I think Justin brought it up in one of our Zooms. But that fee that we're talking about, you know, can we do anything about that? Is there anybody or our state legislators from Connecticut working on trying to get rid of that fee?
It's in their hands at the moment, we'll see. They're in session, there's a lot of discussions with Pura and things like that, so hopefully
This doesn't seem
we'll have
right.
some relief.
Doesn't seem right the municipality should be paying something like that.
For anybody.
Nobody should be paying
Yeah,
that.
but particularly, yeah.
And Mr. Chairman, excuse me, on page 82, Recreation Department, the Chief of Staff, Justin Rosin, made a comment that, that there possibly could have been I don't know if error is the right word, but I will need again to look back at the notes and discussions for the seasonal temporary account and whether or not there'll be a recommendation to revert back to the department request or to leave it at 375. So I'll take a second look at that as well.
Why would there be, you know, the previous year was 415.
No,
Why
I
would you stick with that?
stand corrected, Mr. Arnold. I have in my notes 415, not 465. So Justin made a comment that perhaps he meant to recommend to me, perhaps is the 415. So I'm just gonna go back to my notes and the emails and get clarification on whether it was definitive that the three of us, the director, the mayor's office, and I, whether we agreed that 415 would actually be the needed amount or the 375.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, I can't imagine that went down, because it's all minimum, typically minimum wage or a good portion of it, so.
Right, that was another cost driver, minimum wage increased in January. So we had to make the adjustment to appropriately fund the department. That was actually underfunded for many, many years.
The seasonal temporary one?
Yeah, because it never kept up with the increases of minimum wage.
Right.
Okay.
And there was always transfers being made.
That is true. Well, Peter, if you wanna confirm that, that would be helpful, and
Yes.
we could consider it next month, but it seems appropriate. Employee benefits, page 84.
The benefits are good.
Yeah, they seem pretty stable.
And is the pension thing, you know, what level is it funded at?
It's approximately 83%. And we're fully funding it. And just note that it wasn't being fully funded for a period of time.
Okay.
And I think the increase this year to fully funded is an additional $1 million.
Yeah, 1.2,
Little over
Yeah.
a million.
1,000,001, so.
That's the ARP is the one, oh, they don't call it
They call it ADEC,
that.
ADEC.
And what does that stand for?
Actuarially determined employer contribution.
It's still a recommendation, not a mandate, right?
It's still the professional and recommendation of the actuaries who do all the analysis, yes.
How many years prior to this year has it not been fully funded? Do we know?
How
Like
many
you're
years?
saying, you fully funded it this year, right, Mr. Mayor?
And last year.
And last year, so your 2 years in office, you fully funded it. Prior to that, you're saying it wasn't fully funded?
Well, I'll try to clarify. The mayor's correct, under his administration was fully funded, and part of the Blake administration, the latter part, he reverted to full funding toward the latter end of his administration. But prior to that latter end, there was a period of years where it was not fully funded. I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but I would say it was approximately 5 or 6 years that it wasn't fully funded, and then in the latter part of the previous mayor's administration, he did fully fund it, and then Mayor Giannatasio continued with that in his budgets.
Where would we get that historically? We request that
You
for
actually
review?
can see, it's on one page of the official statement of the city of Milford. If you go to the finance department webpage under official statements, there is a page, a couple of pages about the pension, and it's right there on the page, you'll see the full history of what the attic was, what the city funded for it. I think it goes back at least 10 years, so you'll see the whole history.
Was this the last year where we were adjusting the rate?
Yes,
Student growth
this
rate
is-
down to?
Yep, we are approaching the last year of the phase-in from 7.5 assumed rate of return to 7.0.
It was up over 8, I believe.
It was 8.25
Eight and a
at one
quarter.
point.
Right. Historic.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Joe. Mr. Mayor, anything further on employee benefits? Insurance and bonds. Claims and refunds. Benefit salary reserves, easy for me to say, and then I think Peter, you indicated there's a number of units that are being in the process of negotiation, so including police and dispatchers. Unallocated contingency. Council on Aging, page 8-7.
Mr. Chair, through you. I'm just wondering why the pretty severe cut from what they requested to what, you wanted to give them. It's 191,000. And I'm of the impression that most of this is their budget. It's not like other organizations where it's like, 5 or 6% of the budget. Just wondering what your thought process was.
Well, I don't look at it as a cut. This is the first time they ever got an increase. You have to look back. Historically, they were always flat and kept flat.
Mm-hmm.
So I was of the belief to start out taking smaller steps, working towards getting them in a better place. But with all of the other cost drivers that we've discussed here tonight, I had to spread things out.
Right.
So it doesn't look like a big increase, but before you know it, we'll be back here again at another budget cycle.
Mm-hmm.
That's how fast time goes by, and we can certainly build on it. And my objective is obviously to get them to a place where they're more comfortable in what they're doing. They're talking about raising some fees at the same time. There's a lot of programming going on there. It's a great senior center.
Mm-hmm.
It attracts people from not just Milford, but the surrounding towns.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's why, it seems like this would be something that would actually satisfy the citizens of Milford, that subset.
Well, as you may have noted, there is a $40,000 increase.
And honestly, until you just said that, I didn't notice that, so that's part
No,
of it.
and I appreciate that. When I came into this position, some of these departments were not appropriately funded and they were zeroed out and there was never any increase for many years. So, now I'm trying to, give you a real budget.
Gotcha. Okay,
It's just gonna take a little time.
okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, thank you, Brett, Mr. Arnold. Page 88, CMed, Regional Mental Health, and Borough of Woodmont. I do have a thought on Borough of Woodmont, or a comment. Mr. Vanessa, I think he did indicate that his request was an error. Is there any input on that?
Woodmont's like the best place to live right now.
Tell me about it. Yeah.
So,
Is 304,000, is that?
That's what it's
That's-
for, yeah.
That's what he meant to
Yeah,
recommend?
the
Yeah.
borough president, Mr.
Requested.
Vanessa had indicated he actually meant to request 304,000, but that was not presented to us.
What do us think?
Well, he has someone that works with him, I think it's on the public works side. It's Jimmy Malika.
Right.
Who does an outstanding job there for many, many years. And, all of their needs have been addressed and will continue to be addressed. I think it's like every other department that we're looking at, could everyone use a little extra money? I mean, we all could use a little extra money, but I think we just have to, get there, slowly. But this is something that we can certainly look at the next budget cycle.
Well, I said, yeah, I can appreciate that, as you said, if there's a lot of requests in the budget and, obviously, we're all sensitive to keeping it as flat as possible.
We could do a technical change to that or no?
Well, you could, I wouldn't consider 304, but I might consider another $10,000 or something.
Yeah, split the difference.
Just to, just to kind of move us, because as far, I don't have my budget going back on my earlier books, but there certainly wasn't an increase last year.
Without going back to the system, I do know.
We did increase it a few years back.
Yeah, there
We
was
did.
a,
It was 240, I think, for 3 years, right?
Yeah, there was a recent increase they had asked, and that the mayor, whoever the mayor was at the time had allowed.
I think it went from
recommended it.
240 to 265.
Correct, I recall that too.
But that's probably been 3 years ago.
Yeah, he said that.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's prudent to note also, Woodmont is very well maintained.
Yes.
As we all know, I drive through there quite a bit. But the city has taken on paying their insurance. Right, Peter?
Yeah.
Where in the past, they always paid for their own insurance.
Okay.
I don't know how that transition transpired, but being in this position, I've been, it's been brought to my attention. I want to bring it to your attention as the Board of Finance. I think it's important that you know that as well, because insurance has increased overall for all of us and for the city. So we have been paying that bill.
I was not aware of that, so that's very helpful, Mr. Mayor.
How much is that, Mr. Mayor?
I'll defer to Peter.
About?
Yeah, I don't have the exact number on the top of my head, but it had to be, at least in the 30,000 range, that they were annually paying the city. And I think, with all due respect to the borough, they did ask me at one point, a number of years ago, that they were concerned about the increases each year, and so I tried to reach a compromise and kept it flat at some point. But then subsequently, after that, not too long after that, they decided that they could not or would not pay it, or whatever the case may be. And we've tried, the mayor, previous mayor, to have discussions, and but ultimately, the bottom line is that they just stopped paying that bill to help the city. And so we are still insuring them. We bear the full cost of that coverage now.
Is that property and liability insurance?
Property and liability insurance, yes.
In other words, there's $30,000 of
Oh,
insurance
benefit,
premiums
yeah,
that you don't see.
Correct.
That's been there for a few years.
A few years. Yeah.
Do they have a vehicle for raising money within Woodmont?
Yeah, 1% tax, right? 1 mil, they have a
Borough.
They have like a special.
They have a
Woodmont
taxing
thing?
authority, they can tax their residents.
Okay,
Yes,
so
And
at
on
least
top
if they
of that-
wanted to, they could generate revenue.
yes.
Just so we're clear, on top of that, we do offer in-kind services to the borough, on an as-need basis, depending on the scope of work. I mean, they have Malaco, they're contracted,
Right.
but, it's part of the city.
Mhm.
And we pay for their insurance, where we never did before. And I don't know if it's best practice to continue to do that.
Mhm.
That remains to be seen, but we're stuck with it though.
Right. All right, well, that, as I said, that's very helpful. I'm comfortable keeping it at 265. I don't know if anybody has any other feelings about it. All right, thank you. Transit, Bridges, veterans on page 89. And we're not going, unless somebody has any comments on pages 90, 91, those are small grants, which we did not really do. Oh, I'm sorry, I did skip over HSD, page 90, Human Services Department, which is not a small grant. So if there's any comments on that,
Well, Phil still gets the grant.
Flotilla, yeah. It's been going up in a while, I don't think. Bethel Center, again, I think, Bethel and Boys and Girls Club certainly are, it's money well spent by the city. We appreciate all of their efforts, in town, both of those, as well as, Groveland Fine Arts Council, I think is also money well spent by the city and positive return to the community. Anything, school debt, page 93. Education operations, well, we'll save that for next week.
Mr. Chairman, I
Yes, sir.
just have a question about that school debt.
Yes, sir.
So the $1 million bond that just went through for them for their esports arena, will that go on to this next year?
Well, it's not a dollar for dollar, as when the bond is actually issued, and Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, then each year during the term of the bond, they'll pay some principal on that bond, so that's what you see there, like an amortization of the bond, and the same with the interest. So it won't be the full 1.1, it'll be whatever is paid on the principal during that year will be shown there. Cause I don't know what our total debt is, and it's probably $100 million or something, I don't know, the school debt rate is, I can't recall. But that's only that's only shows the principal that's being paid next year, not the entire outstanding principal.
Okay.
I would say that the principal amount, it's more the interest, like we'll do an estimate for what the interest might be in May if they were to start the project over the course of the fiscal year. And depending on what they do and what they pay, that may impact us to some extent, yes.
Because you won't be paying the principal on those particular bonds for 2 or 3
Right,
years
it's
out.
not the principal, because if I theoretically, hypothetically borrow for a portion in October of 25, that principal's not due until November or October of 26, which would be the 27 budget, not the 26. But the interest would be due May of 25. There's an interest-only payment, and that's the part where I have to estimate and say, let me estimate based on what their request is and the situation at hand, what might be the effect of the interest payment in May. So I have to do an estimate to increase the interest, and that's reflected here.
Thank you.
Okay, education operations, educational health insurance contribution. Page 95, education health services, school nurses, that brings us to the end of the regular budget. As noted, we did eliminate the 2 hygienist positions, or the health department did. The special funds, revenue funds, sewer, page 98, which is not much there. Wastewater is primarily where the money is, page 101. I must say, I don't know if you can give all the credit to Milford, but Long Island Sound is sure looking a lot better than it ever looked, so. That's gotta be at least, somewhat in part due to Beaver Brook and our wastewater facilities. Other Management Commission, page 108, there's the Marina Enterprise Revenue, Harbor Commission, page 109. Again, another asset to the city of Milford, well run. Golf course. Another asset. Okay, so we don't usually spend a lot of time on revenue at this stage, but
We got approved.
this is the general revenue fund. So when we meet next, 2 weeks from now, determine what the current taxes will be, and then we'll figure out the mill rate. Education cost sharing.
Does that come from the state?
Well, it does, but I guess with all the headlines over the last couple days, is there gonna be anything added? I'm on page 4, state education grant, special education, there's an asterisk next to it, is there?
Was the assembly able to override the veto?
I only saw the headline, I don't think it's been completed yet, but I'm wondering, is there gonna be enough?
If I'm not mistaken, I believe it was a compromise was made, they were able to get the funding from a non-recurrent, like another part of the state budget. I think it was related to interest from a grant funding. And the legislature and the governor, I think, came to a compromise to fund that I think it was 40 million in special education, so it would not impact education cost sharing, I believe, it would impact special education. But it's more pertinent probably to the Board of Education itself, because that will help offset
The special
the special education costs and deficits that they usually have.
So that special revenue fund would be managed by the city, but basically for the benefit of the Board of Ed? Or does that go to them?
Basically, they transfer whatever deficit they have in special education, and they ask the city to either give them 100% of what the state gives them in this excess cost grant.
Right.
Or if by chance in that given year, their deficit is not as much and they don't need it all, then they would give that extra back to the city and it would go into this account of special education. The reason we funded it zero is that for the past several years, they continue to run a deficit, so we thought it would be prudent not to budget an amount, because if we do, then we would have a shortfall on the city side.
Those are the things that we have to deal with in real time.
Right. Are we pretty confident with the, I know it's so early, which is why it's difficult to predict this stage when we're voting on it in March. The budget won't be finalized until May or June potentially. That number is basically a little less than last year. Are we pretty comfortable with that number, or we think it's gonna change that? I'm talking about the 9,609, 272.
I feel comfortable, I haven't heard any commentary about thoughts of cutting that significantly, if any. There's always a chance it could be trimmed a little bit, but hopefully it would be a small amount if it were to go down.
What about bingo permits? We expect a big increase in bingo permits this year?
Well, I guess the good news is that
seems.
The governor found 40 million.
40 million, yeah, somewhere, 1,800, I can't believe we still get $1,800 from pickup payments.
Yeah, that input comes just to, so
That's
you
all
know,
the kids
from the
know.
police department, and I think Chief Mello indicated to me that they thought they'd see a slight
They'd still
uptick, yeah.
Chatter online.
Yeah.
Might
Yeah,
get a text message about bingo.
Oh, boy. Getting late, we're gonna get out of here, 2 minutes, Lauren, don't worry, get you home. I'll,
Too late to eat pizza now.
That's pizza.
okay,
Catering, maybe. Stay on.
yeah, revenue, I think we've covered this already. Well, again, can't predict, but beach parking, I think that's been a very successful program, the mayor's implemented. Nice to see the revenue. Certainly it costs money to run our beaches, so it's nice to have some.
Where's that, Mr. Chair?
Page 7. So,
Working on the miniature golf course, once we get that going, we'll see some revenue.
where's that gonna go?
Eisenhower Park,
Oh,
just past the splash pad.
good idea.
Little
Oh, we have
enterprise
a
fund.
theme yet? Like,
It's gonna be Milford themed. We're gonna have 18 holes, where one's gonna be City Hall, one's gonna be the tower near Stonebridge, one could be the Bertram Moses
Yeah, the building.
building.
Lauren's got a 2 handicap with
We
the,
could do the Borough of Woodmont.
sure.
Small fee.
You got a Secondary truck stop, isn't
Sands,
there?
Sands, truck
That's the
stop.
kind of dress that would be good. This is for kids, right?
No, this is for adults.
So, no, okay, then we can have the Sakati
Milford.
That was good, Brian.
Of course. It's the 19th. The 19th.
Milford Police Department, the Fire Department.
Nobody will come in.
That's right.
That'll be the last hole where they keep the ball.
Okay, so we've got numbers here for FAA Gate for the power plant pilot and the Gen Con pilot. Are we out of that pilot already? Or is this the last year of the pilot?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the Gen Con agreement is still in effect, so that'll stay. I will say I'm not sure if I'll have enough information to change the Milford Power Plant pilot yet.
Right.
But I'm expecting at the Board of Aldermen phase, hopefully the assessor and the city will have enough information to update that figure if a pilot agreement is settled upon, or if not, it may need to be zeroed out and added to the grand list. So it will change the grand list number if it goes the other way.
Gotcha. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Thank you everyone for your input. Thank you gentlemen for sticking it out with us. Anybody else before we
Hilarious.
entertain a motion to recess until, what did we say, was it 19th, March 19th?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we go to recess until we can reconvene on Wednesday, March 19th, in person at City Hall. The Board of Aldermen chambers at 5:30 PM for the final vote on the 2025-2026 budget.
Second.
Second, thank you, motion. Thank you, Lauren. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We'll see you at City Hall on the 19th, 5:30 sharp.